Hello and welcome to the OverwatchOpen North American edition. I am your host, Rachel Quirico. My voice is deep because I've got a cold note. It's James Bardoff. I'm here in the Overwatch. Back in the studio finally. Haven't been here for a while. Just landed from Bermuda a few hours ago, but I'm straight into business here with Fishsticks and Jorstar. Right. How are you both doing?
Thanks for joining us, James. Pleasure to be sitting alongside you here.
Yeah. I mean, I've been watching here and there. You know, I've been hopping all over the place, but from my various locations, I have been tuning in to the internet and watching the streams here, enjoying the professional Overwatch. Lots happening, lots of team changes, lots of roster changes, lots of action. It's still very, lots of carnage happening, really, lots of turbulence, and that's always interesting to see. Lots of teams being picked up, which is good. Been a good, I think, all the kind of professional organizations that we're used to hearing from different games swept into Overwatch pretty quickly here, so hopefully everything will calm down sooner rather than later.
Well, obviously we have a $100,000 tournament that just took place this last weekend, but this is the playoffs for the $300,000 tournament that's going to be taking place in Atlanta at the end of the month. So the question is, who's going to go in? And we're going to find out today, at least, who will be the first to qualify directly in. And I think that's pretty cool because we've actually got a pretty sweet match coming up here,
Indeed,
Jorstar.
but before we do, before we go over there, Mr. Fishsticks, we have some highlights to look at from week 1 of Envy. Ooh.
Envious came into the first week as the team to beat, not just in the qualifier but in the tournament as a whole. And so far they've lived up quite well to their legendary status as they proceeded to demolish all opposition, able to beat quite easily Mocket Esports, SPLYCE and then fan favourites Luminosity in the semi-finals, leaving them just complexity. And that was an easy task for them as well. A quick 3-0 scoreline and a quick playoff spot for Envious.
Based in America now.
Yeah.
Yep,
so now they're essentially an American team, at least regionally speaking.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So they're all living together, boot camping in America. They've had that tremendous win streak, as Ben mentioned. Of course, it's really difficult to compare them to the NIP win streak, but at the same time, there haven't really been 57 LAN places they could have actually been yet. So who knows? In the future, they might actually come back and show us something amazing. But
so is it true they were considered the best European team when they were in Europe? Or one of the best, like top of the crop?
Well, 4 of the members came from the team formerly known as IDDQD, which actually went on a dominant run with Tvik, who of course plays for Rogue, which is the team that ended up winning the ESL Atlantic Showdown that just took place last week. So yes, IDDQD at a point was also undefeated. So this team has been undefeated twice with 2 different, well, slightly different rosters. 4 of the core of Chips, Jin, Coco, of course, Internet, Hulk, and one more that is not coming to my brain right now.
I'm trying to remember which one of them it is.
Help him, Jorstar, help him!
Help me, Jorstar, help me!
No, I'll come back to that. I will get it. I'll come back
Harry
to
Hook, of course, the Lucio player.
Oh, because Never Give Up.
Yes.
Yes, that's
that
why.
Was his old name.
Yeah, exactly. So so they've ported over to Envious. They had an incredibly dominant win streak in beta, continued that over under the Envious banner, and we have to talk about them as being favorites for the group. And you know what? Arguably until last week, and maybe even still now, favorites for everything. They are pretty much still ranked the #1 team in the world, and they're there for a reason. One loss is not going to change that.
Yeah.
But this match that we are going into now is particularly interesting because it's 2 teams that very obviously aren't on the same level, but are still at a pretty good level. And actually, this is going to be a really close best of 3, I'm hoping.
Yeah. Speaking of teams and matches, 2 things to go through right now. First one is that Battle.net apparently is being DDoS at the moment, so we might have some delays before the match starts. I think it was being DDoS, but now the DDoS has ceased. Hopefully. So the teams should be getting ready as we speak. Secondly, due to roster turbulence, actually, one of the teams in this part of the bracket has unfortunately folded. So we have 1 less team today, which means Envious, as a top seed in this group, is going to get a bye. So if we can have a quick look at the schedule, then we can see what our first match is going to be, since Envious were going to be match #1, but they are in fact moving over to the next match later on. So once we get a black background from Mr. Producer Reese, and perhaps we'll see schedule. Okay, he can't do it, don't worry. So let's go to the social media section. If you want to get involved, get connected, get on your tweeters, it is hashtag OWOpen for the Overwatch Open. Overwatch Open on Twitter and overwatchopen.com on the .coms.
Yeah.
Obviously, you people have Twitter as well. Are you tweeting you Overwatch opening?
Trying to, yes. I'm at Fishsticks. This is at Jorsar, of course. We'll be tweeting about this tournament among plenty of other stuff going on in the future of Overwatch. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about this match a little bit. We've got SPLYCE, and of course we've got SELFLESS, two teams that have been sort of in the mid to high tier rungs of the North American competitive scene for a while. Neither team has been able to really make a big splash, though, at this point. Obviously, SPLYCE has a big background in Team Fortress 2, so they've got players that a lot of folks are going to recognize if you're familiar with that scene. You've got guys like Clockwork and Pure, who were some of the top tier in Team Fortress 2. Haven't quite made it yet in this game. But then on the other side, you've got the SELFLESS guys, many of them coming from Call of Duty 4, some COD 4 Pro Mod players there. You've got guys like Emong and RobWiz, who, if you've been following CSGO recently, you might recognize those names as well, as they've been playing for a couple of mid-tier teams in that scene. So both of these teams have a lot of background in competitive FPS, but neither have really made it yet. So I think this is an interesting group because one of these two teams is going to make it through. Well, I guess I'm assuming
that's a very good statement.
I'm assuming Envious will make it through, but one of these two teams will make it through and make a name for themselves.
Well, speaking of making it through, let's see how these teams got to this point and have a look at the format of this tournament. So it started off with open brackets. Funnily enough, I actually entered the open brackets in Europe with a completely random team of people, but I was still a bit raw to the game, so I played Pharaoh and got wrecked. But after the open brackets, we have 4 teams. One team from each week came top seed here, and we'll get to that later on. 16 teams per group in Europe and North America. So moving on from this area, you can see this is what the group stage looks like, and it will be all these teams are playing for the live finals at ELEAGUE Arena, Turner Studios in Atlanta, something I'm familiar with from Counter-Strike. Maybe some of you guys will be familiar with as well as this tournament progresses. So, SELFLESS and SPLYCE, do you have a favorite?
I think it's... I want to be able to say it's going to be a close match between the two. It is sometimes difficult to tell some of these mid-tier teams apart, simply because we're used to seeing them broadcast in situations where they're playing one of the higher tier teams, and sometimes the games can be close, but you often expect 2-0s in those situations. So it's very tricky to maybe place them relative to each other. If I had to pick off the top of my head, you forced me to choose now, I might give a slight edge to SPLYCE, but in reality, both teams have a reasonable FPS gaming background. They've given a lot, even though they're not displacing the top teams, they've given a lot of the top teams a run for their money, and they're both very, very respected. I'm just hoping for a close game, to be honest. SPLYCE maybe on a razor's edge.
Yeah, I mean, if you actually looked at the rankings right there, they're both right behind Sodipop. And that's actually interesting because they've both lost to Sodipop multiple times. They're kind of on the bubble of breaking into the top 6 or so in NA, and Sodipop so far has been the gatekeeper for both of these teams.
So you saw there was only 4 points between these two teams on that leaderboard. On the left-hand side, you saw the 4 that were already qualified from topping their leaderboards in the qualifying stage to get to this area. So this is what they qualified for, and now they need to qualify for the LAN finals. We saw a team from Europe qualified for Atlanta a little bit earlier. We'll find out who manages to do it today as well. So again, Envy have a bye going into the next round. I think we're going to have a look at the brackets actually for all the groups in the North American region at the moment. So we can see this is the one we're covering today. Envious with a bye, and they will be facing the winner of the coming match, SPLYCE versus SELFLESS. This is Group A.
And talk about a prize for winning. Go up against Envious.
So Cloud9, Huckleberry, Sodipop, not Soda Pop, but Sodipop, and ELEAGUE. This is England after all. It's not Al. What do you even say in America?
Algae.
Algae. No, it's algae.
You're
still
outvoted.
not CLG.
Just wait until ZP.
2-1, mate.
See what you guys
on
are
a
going for
casting
there.
desk. Into Group C, we're going to have Fnatic, Mono, or Mono if you will, Team Liquid, and Clutch. Relatively easy names to pronounce for both sides of this desk.
Yes.
Definitely how we're actually broadcasting.
Astute observation there, James.
It's going to be quite fun, and then moving into Group D, of course, this is going to be quite interesting.
Complexity,
oh man, this
Gecko
is a
Fox,
rough group.
NRG, and Method. I like Gecko Fox. I like what they're doing there.
Yeah.
That's good. So why is this a rough group? What's rough about this?
Well, actually, we had another team kind of disband last minute. So Gecko Fox was formerly NG Red. That was the team that was going to be in this spot. They have disbanded, so now we're up to Gecko Fox. But this is a rough group because it couldn't be any closer between these 4 teams. I mean, Complexity, they're kind of on, right now, they're probably number 4 in the region of NA, so they're still among the best of the best. But Energy and Method, who knows what's going to happen in that match? I mean, traditionally, you'd think Energy for sure. This is, of course, the team that a lot of folks are going to be rooting for out there, with Seagull, of course, as one of the captains. But they've been struggling as of late. And on the other hand, you have Method, who's just been on the up and up. You know, this team has got a lot of talent behind it. They've been playing better and better and better, and they were picked up by Method quite recently. So it's really up in the air. I mean, Complexity certainly expect them to go through, but will Energy actually be able to get that second place finish that all the fans of Energy, obviously, are going to be wanting, and a lot of people would expect, but it's really not set in stone at all.
So one of the interesting things I've noted about the Overwatch scene is all the statistics you have on the characters being picked and so on, how often they're picked each week and so on and so forth. Earlier today, we saw sentries coming out on the defense of one of these control points, sorry, the payload points. So are you expecting more kind of pocket characters, if you will, to take an FGC term? You know, everyone's got that character in the corner to bring out when things get mad. Are we seeing a change in the kind of the lesser characters being picked?
Well, I mean, let's look at the standard picks that you're seeing right now over the course of the last couple of weeks. Every single team is running with a Lucio and a Zenyatta. There's almost no wiggle room there. You're not really going to see a Mercy. You're not really going to see an Ana. Outside of some very rare cases, we have seen a tiny bit of Ana instead of Zenyatta, but basically these are 2 non-negotiable characters. Zarya is another one that's almost not really on the table, right? You see
she's
Zarya
responsible for the fall of D.Va, right?
One of the reasons, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have being fed just the D.Va primary fire into Zarya bubble can often be incredibly difficult, but don't forget as well that all the other tanks are also able to shoot through defensive matrix. Well, in Winston's case, maybe not so much shoot if you're going to be batting them away as well, but either or. And the point is the other tanks just seem to have a little bit more utility at the moment. When D.Va first came out with the changes post-patch, a lot of people were saying, actually, this is absolutely fantastic. The toggle on defensive matrix, to be fair, has just been really good. And as people slowly figure out how to play, how to maneuver with, and how to play against D.Va, we're simply entering another phase of the game where D.Va isn't being played as much. That's not to say that with no changes this time 2 weeks from now, D.Va isn't going to be back in the meta really strongly. It's still way too early to tell, and we shouldn't be making any sort of knee-jerk reactions. I just think it's actually quite cool how we're seeing the meta develop pretty much live over the last couple of weeks.
Okay, we'll come back to that because the vetoes have come in and on your screens right now. So the first map is going to be King's Row. Now, the way the veto process works is that the second map is out of Dorado and Gibraltar, and basically the team who loses the first map will pick that second map. So we don't know which one it's going to be until the conclusion of map number 1. Any particular opinions on who this might favor?
You know, it's going to be tough. I mean, these 2 teams are just so even that I can't really pick one over the other, frankly. If I had to say just on a gut feeling, I'd have to go with Selfless having a slight advantage when it comes to the payload maps. But again, we do have a whole bunch of payload maps in the pool here. So obviously they're both kind of looking towards that type of gameplay, the escort the payload. So hard to say. Both teams very mechanically skilled and have a lot of background in FPS. I'm not really sure what kind of map is going to favor.
Is it still early days to pick a favorite out of these 2 teams?
I think it actually means the map choices make it a little bit more difficult because we don't have the go-to, if we lose at a payload map, we can pick the King of the Hill format out of the remaining map choices here. There are 3 very standard payload maps that we have in this pool. Maybe if you replace Gibraltar with Hollywood, then it would be like, wow, this is about as standard as it can get. So any team, basically the stronger payload team is going to win. There are no tricks up anybody's sleeve. There's nothing that people are hiding away. It's purely going to be how well can we work as a team. But either one of these teams could take it here.
All right, we will find out which one will take map 1 after a very short break. So stay tuned, and these 2 fine gentlemen will take you through map 1. See you back here shortly.